I've worked a lot of night shifts in my life. Retail, security, cleaning crews. There's something different about being at work when everyone else has gone home. The building feels wrong. Too big, too empty. Sounds echo differently. Shadows fall in places they shouldn't. Most of the time, it's just your imagination playing tricks on you. Most of the time. This is about the times when it wasn't. I was 22, working as a night security guard at an office building downtown. It was a 12-story building, mostly law firms and accounting offices. Nothing exciting. My job was simple. Walk the floors every hour, check that doors were locked, make sure no one had broken in. The rest of the time I sat at the front desk watching security monitors and doing homework for my online classes. The building was old, built in the 1920s, all Art Deco architecture and marble floors. Beautiful during the day, unsettling at night. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'd see the last office workers leaving as I arrived, and the cleaning crew would finish up around midnight. After that, I was alone until morning. For the first month, nothing unusual happened. I'd make my rounds, check the floors, go back to the desk. Sometimes I'd see a light left on in an office and I'd turn it off. Sometimes a door would be unlocked and I'd lock it. Normal stuff. The building settled and creaked like old buildings do. I got used to it. Then one night in late November, I was doing my midnight rounds. Started on the 12th floor and worked my way down. Everything was normal until I reached the 7th floor. As I stepped out of the elevator, I heard typing. The distinct clatter of fingers on a keyboard, coming from one of the offices down the hall. I walked toward the sound. The office belonged to a law firm called Henderson and Associates. The door was closed but not locked. I could see light coming from under it. I knocked. The typing stopped. I waited. No response. I knocked. Again, called out that I was building security. Nothing. I opened the door. The office was empty. Desks clear. Computers off. Lights out. But I could still hear the typing. It was coming from deeper in the office, from one of the private offices along the back wall. I walked through the reception area past the cubicles. The sound got louder. I reached the office it was coming from. The nameplate on the door said, Robert Henderson, Senior Partner. I knocked. The typing continued. I tried the handle. Locked. I called out again, said I needed whoever was in there to come out and identify themselves. The typing stopped. Then I heard a chair rolling back, like someone standing up from a desk. Footsteps approaching the door. I stepped back, ready to explain that the building was closed, that they needed to leave. The footsteps stopped right at the door. I could see a shadow in the gap at the bottom. Someone was standing on the other side, inches away. I waited for them to open it. They didn't, just stood there. I could hear breathing, slow and deep. I told them to open the door. No response. The breathing continued. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police. That's when I heard it. A voice from the other side of the door, deep and raspy, like someone who'd been smoking for 50 years. It said, "I'm working, leave me alone." I told them the building was closed, that everyone needed to be out by midnight. The voice said, "I've been here longer than you. I have work to finish. Go away." I called my supervisor, explained the situation. He told me to call the police, that we might have a trespasser or someone who refused to leave. While I was on the phone with 911, the typing started again. The dispatcher said they'd send someone over. I waited in the reception area. The typing continued, steady and rhythmic. About 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. I explained what happened. They approached the office door, knocked, identified themselves. The typing stopped immediately. One officer tried the handle, still locked. He knocked again, louder, ordering whoever was inside to open the door. Nothing, no response, no breathing, no movement, just silence. The officer asked if I had keys. I did. Master keys for the whole building. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The office was empty. No one at the desk. No one in the room. The computer was off. The chair was pushed in. Everything neat and organized. No sign anyone had been there. The officers checked the windows, locked from the inside, checked the closet under the desk, everywhere someone could hide. Nothing. One officer asked if there was another way out of the office. I said no. Just the one door. And I'd been standing right outside it the whole time. They took a report. Suggested maybe I'd heard sounds from another floor, that old buildings can channel noise in weird ways. They left. I finished my shift, but I kept thinking about that voice. I've been here longer than you. What did that mean? The next night I came in for my shift and asked the evening security guard if he'd ever had any problems on the 7th floor. He got this look on his face. Asked me what kind of problems. I told him about the typing, the voice. He nodded slowly and told me about Robert Henderson. Robert Henderson had been a senior partner at the firm for 30 years. He'd practically lived in that office, working 16-hour days, never taking vacations. 3 years ago, they found him dead at his desk. Heart attack. He'd been there all weekend, sitting in his chair, hands still on his mouse. The cleaning crew found him Monday morning. The firm moved out 6 months later. Said it was for more space, but the evening guard said everyone knew the real reason. People heard things in that office, typing late at night. The sound of Robert's chair rolling across the floor. Sometimes his desk lamp would be on in the morning, even though it had been off the night before. Sometimes papers would be moved around, files reorganized. I asked if he'd ever experienced anything. He said no, that it only happened on the night shift, that Robert had always worked nights, always been in the office when everyone else went home. I should have requested a transfer, should have quit. But I needed the job, needed the money. So I kept working. Tried to avoid the 7th floor during my rounds. But every night at midnight, I'd hear it, that typing, sometimes faint, sometimes loud, always coming from Robert Henderson's old office. A month later, I worked up the courage to try something. At midnight, when the typing started, I went to the 7th floor, walked straight to the office. The door was closed. I knocked. The typing stopped. I said, "Mr. Henderson, I know you're working. I'm sorry to bother you, but the building is closed. You need to rest." There was a long pause, then that raspy voice, quieter this time, said, "I can't rest. I have work to do. Finish." So much work. I'll rest when it's done. I asked what work. What could be so important? The voice said, "The Paulson case. I need to file the brief by Monday. If I don't, they'll lose everything." I did some research the next day. The Paulson case was one of Robert Henderson's last cases before he died. A wrongful termination suit. He'd been working on it the weekend he had his heart attack. The brief was due that Monday. His associates finished it after he died, and they won the case. That night I went back to the office, told the voice that the case was finished, that they'd won, that the work was done. The typing stopped. I heard the chair roll back. Footsteps to the door. The shadow appeared in the gap at the bottom. The voice said, "We won." I said yes. There was a long silence. Then the voice, softer now, almost relieved, said, "Good, that's good. I can rest now." I never heard the typing again after that night. The office stayed quiet, empty. A few months later, a new firm moved into that space. I told the managing partner about Robert Henderson, about what I'd experienced. He listened politely, but I could tell he thought I was crazy. I quit that job 6 months later, found work somewhere else. But I still think about Robert Henderson sometimes. About a man who worked so hard, cared so much about his cases that even death couldn't make him stop. About how he'd been trapped in that office for 3 years, typing away at a brief that had already been filed, trying to finish work that was already done. I wonder if he finally found peace, or if he's still there somewhere, in whatever comes after, still working, still typing, still trying to finish just one more case. My second story comes from my friend Jessica. She worked as a nurse at a psychiatric hospital on the edge of town. She told me this story 2 years ago, and it's the reason she transferred to a different hospital and refuses to work night shifts anymore. The psychiatric hospital was old, built in the 1950s, 4 floors, about 80 beds. Jessica worked on the 3rd floor, which housed the long-term patients. People with severe schizophrenia, treatment-resistant depression, patients who'd been committed by the courts. The floor was secure, locked doors, reinforcement protocols, the whole system designed to keep patients safe and staff protected. Night shift on the 3rd floor was usually quiet. Patients were medicated, sleeping. The nurses would do their rounds every hour, check vitals, make sure everyone was okay. Between rounds, they'd sit at the nurses' station doing paperwork, monitoring cameras, waiting for morning. Jessica had been working there for about a year when this happened. She was scheduled for a Thursday night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. When she arrived, the evening nurse doing handoff mentioned that one of the rooms was empty. Room 314. The patient who'd been there, an elderly woman named Dorothy, had died that afternoon, natural causes. She'd been there for 15 years. The room hadn't been cleaned out yet. They do it in the morning. Jessica made a note of it. One less room to check during rounds. She started her shift. Everything normal? She had one other nurse working with her that night, a woman named Angela, who'd been there even longer than Jessica. They split the floor. Angela took rooms 301 through 312. Jessica took 313 through 328. At midnight, Jessica did her first round. She went down the hall checking on patients. Everyone was asleep or resting quietly. She passed room 314. The door was closed. She glanced at the small window in the door out of habit. The room was dark, empty. She moved on. At 1 a.m., she did her second round. Same routine, everyone fine. When she passed room 314, she glanced at the window again. Stopped. There was someone in the room. A figure, sitting in the chair by the window, small, hunched over. Jessica's first thought was that another patient had wandered in. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was empty. The chair by the window was empty. No one there. Jessica checked the bathroom, under the bed, in the closet. Nothing. She went back to the nurse's station, told Angela what she'd seen. Angela said she was probably just tired, that the mind plays tricks on night shift, that she'd seen a shadow or a reflection. Jessica agreed. Went back to her paperwork. But she kept thinking about that figure. It had looked so real, so solid. At 2 a.m., she did her third round. When she reached room 314, she made herself look through the window. The figure was there again, sitting in the chair. This time Jessica could see more details. It was a woman, elderly, wearing a hospital gown, her back to the door facing the window, long gray hair down her back. Jessica opened the door fast, ready to catch whoever had snuck in. The room was empty. Again. But this time the chair was different. It had been facing the bed when Jessica checked the room at 1 a.m. Now it was turned toward the window. Someone had moved it. Jessica radioed Angela, asked her to come to room 314. Angela arrived a minute later. Jessica showed her the chair. Angela said maybe the cleaning crew had been in. Jessica said the cleaning crew had finished at midnight, and they wouldn't come into a room where a patient had just died without authorization. Angela didn't have an explanation. They checked the room together. Nothing. No sign anyone had been there. They locked the door and went back to the station. Angela suggested they skip room 314 during the rest of the rounds. Nothing to check anyway since it was empty. Jessica agreed. But at 3 a.m., when she was walking past the room on her way to check 315, she heard something. Humming. A woman's voice, humming a tune she didn't recognize. Coming from inside room 314. She stopped. Listened. The humming continued. Soft, melodic, like a lullaby. Jessica looked through the window. The figure was in the chair again, but this time it was rocking. Slowly, rhythmically, back and forth. The chair wasn't a rocking chair, it was just a standard hospital armchair, but it was rocking. Jessica called Angela again. They both stood at the door listening. The humming continued. They could both hear it now. Angela pulled out her master key, unlocked the door, and they went in together. The humming stopped the second the door opened. The room was empty. The chair was still. But it was warm. Jessica touched the seat cushion. It was warm, like someone had just been sitting there. Angela called security. 2 guards came up. They searched the room thoroughly, checked the ceiling tiles, the air vents, anywhere someone could hide or access the room. Nothing. One of the guards asked about the patient who died. Jessica told them about Dorothy. The guard nodded. Said sometimes this happened, that when long-term patients died, especially ones who'd been there for years, it took them a while to leave. He said it casually, like it was common knowledge. Angela agreed. Said she'd experienced similar things over the years. Patients who died but still showed up on rounds, sitting in their usual spots, going through their usual routines. She said they usually stopped after a few days. That once the room was cleaned out and a new patient moved in, the activity would cease. Jessica didn't believe in ghosts. She was a nurse, a scientist. She believed in medicine and evidence and things that could be explained, but she couldn't explain what was happening in room 314. At 4 a.m., she forced herself to do a round, walked past room 314 without looking through the window. She could hear the humming again. That same tune, soft and constant. She kept walking, checked the other rooms, came back to the nurse's station. At 5 a.m., the humming stopped. Jessica felt relieved. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been in that room had finally moved on. She did her 5 a.m. round, passed room 314, looked through the window. The figure was standing now, right at the door, facing her, close enough that Jessica could see her face. It was Dorothy, the patient who'd died. Jessica had seen her many times over the past year, had checked on her during rounds, helped her to the bathroom, given her medication, and now she was standing on the other side of the door, her face inches from the glass, staring directly at Jessica. Jessica stumbled backward, hit the wall behind her. Dorothy's face didn't change expression. She just stared. Her eyes were cloudy, unfocused. Her mouth was slightly open. Then she raised her hand and pressed it against the glass, her palm flat against the window, fingers spread. Jessica ran back to the nurse's station, told Angela what she'd seen. Angela went to check. Came back 2 minutes later, pale. She'd seen it too. Dorothy standing at the door, hand on the glass. She said they needed to call the hospital chaplain. That sometimes spiritual intervention helped. The chaplain arrived around 6 a.m. He went to room 314 with Jessica and Angela. They told him what had been happening. He listened, then asked to be left alone in the room for a few minutes. They agreed. He went inside and closed the door. Through the window they could see him talking, moving his hands like he was having a conversation with someone. After about 10 minutes, he came out. He looked exhausted. Said he'd made contact with something in that room. That it was confused. Didn't understand it had died. Thought it still needed to be there. He tried to help it understand, to move on. He asked about Dorothy's family, if they'd been contacted. Jessica said Dorothy had no family, no visitors in the 15 years she'd been there. The chaplain nodded sadly. Said that might be part of it. That she had nowhere to go. No one calling her home. He performed a blessing on the room, said some prayers, told them the activity should stop now. He left. Jessica and Angela finished their shift. When the morning staff came in at 7, they told them what had happened. The day shift supervisor decided to have the room cleaned out immediately and blessed again. They wanted a new patient in there as soon as possible. Jessica went home and slept poorly, kept seeing Dorothy's face pressed against that window, those cloudy eyes staring at her, that hand on the glass. She came back for her next shift 3 days later. Room 314 had been cleaned out, blessed twice more, and a new patient had been moved in, a middle-aged man with bipolar disorder. Jessica checked on him during her rounds. He was fine, sleeping peacefully. But at midnight she heard it again. The humming. Faint this time, but there. She looked through the window of 314. The new patient was asleep in his bed, and sitting in the chair by the window was Dorothy, rocking slowly, humming that same tune. Jessica finished her shift but requested a transfer the next day. She couldn't work on that floor anymore. Couldn't walk past room 314 without seeing Dorothy in that chair. Angela told her later that the activity continued for months. Different nurses would report seeing Dorothy, hearing her humming, finding the chair moved or warm. One nurse said she'd felt someone touch her shoulder when she was alone in the room. Turned around to see Dorothy standing behind her, hand outstretched, like she wanted something but couldn't communicate what. Eventually, the hospital decided to stop using room 314 for patients. They converted it to a storage room, locked it. But staff still report hearing the humming sometimes late at night. Still see that figure sitting in the chair through the small window. Still feel like someone's watching them when they walk past. Jessica works at a different hospital now. Day shift only. She said she'll never work nights again. Can't handle the thought of being alone in those hallways, passing empty rooms, wondering what's watching from the other side of the door. wondering what else is waiting in the dark, confused and lost, unable to leave. My last story is mine. It happened 6 months ago at my current job. I work as a systems administrator for a tech company. We're a small company, maybe 40 employees, in a 2-story building in an industrial park on the edge of town. My job involves maintaining servers, troubleshooting network issues, stuff like that. Most of it I can do remotely, but sometimes I need to go into the server room to physically check equipment or replace hardware. The server room is in the basement. It's small, maybe 10 by 12 feet, filled with racks of servers, network equipment, cables everywhere. It's loud down there. The cooling systems run constantly, fans humming, making it hard to think. It's not a place you want to spend a lot of time. Usually if I need to work in the server room, I do it during business hours. But 6 months ago, we had a critical server issue that came up around 7 p.m. on a Friday. Most everyone had already gone home. I was the only IT person on call that night. The server was overheating, throwing errors, on the verge of crashing. I had to go in and physically check the cooling system. I drove to the office around 8 p.m. The parking lot was empty, except for my car. I let myself in with my key card, disabled the alarm, and headed to the basement. The building was dark except for emergency lighting. My footsteps echoed on the stairs as I went down. I unlocked the server room and went inside. The heat hit me immediately. The room was at least 90 degrees. One of the cooling units had failed. I started troubleshooting, checking connections, looking for the issue. I was so focused on the equipment that I didn't notice it first. But after about 10 minutes, I felt it. That sensation of being watched. I turned around. The server room door was open. I'd left it open for ventilation. The basement hallway beyond was dark. I couldn't see anything out there. I went back to work, but the feeling persisted, getting stronger. I kept glancing at the door, expecting to see someone standing there. No one ever was. I found the problem with the cooling unit, a failed sensor. I'd have to order a replacement, but I could temporarily bypass it to get the system working. I was in the middle of this when I heard it. Footsteps upstairs, directly above the server room. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Walking across the office, I froze, listened. The footsteps continued, crossing the room overhead, then stopping. I told myself it was the building settling. Old buildings make noise. But these weren't random creaks. These were footsteps, with a clear rhythm, someone walking. I finished the bypass as quickly as I could, got the cooling system running again. The server temperature started dropping. I packed up my tools, ready to leave. The footsteps started again, moving across the ceiling, heading toward the stairs that led down to the basement. I stepped out of the server room into the hallway, looked toward the stairs. Empty, but I could still hear the footsteps. Coming down the stairs now, getting closer. I called out, asked if anyone was there. The footsteps stopped. Silence except for the hum of the server room. I waited. Nothing. I called out again, said I was IT, working on the servers. Still nothing. I should have left, should have grabbed my stuff and run for the exit. But I was curious. Maybe it was a co-worker who'd come back to get something, maybe building security, doing rounds. I walked toward the stairs. The basement was a long hallway, with the server room at one end and the stairs at the other, about 40 feet. As I walked, I felt the temperature drop. By the time I reached the stairs, it was cold. I could see my breath. The stairwell was empty. I looked up. The door to the first floor was closed. I started up the stairs, reached the door and pushed it open. The first floor office was dark, lit only by the emergency exit signs and the glow of computer monitors left on in cubicles. I could see the entire floor from where I stood. No one there. I walked through the office, checked the break room, the conference rooms, the bathrooms. Empty. Every door I checked was locked from the inside. No signs anyone had been there. I was alone in the building, but I'd heard those footsteps, clear as day. Someone walking around up here. I went back to the basement to grab my tools from the server room. As I walked down the hallway, I heard a door close behind me. I spun around. The door to the stairs was shut. I'd left it open. I walked back and tried the handle. Locked. From the other side. I pulled out my key card. It should unlock all doors in the building. I swiped it. Nothing. The light on the card reader stayed red. I tried again, still red. I was locked in the basement. I called building security, got voicemail, called my boss, got voicemail. It was after 8 p.m. on a Friday. No one was answering. I tried my key card on the emergency exit at the far end of the basement. Same thing. Red light. Locked. I went back to the server room. Figured I'd wait there, try calling people every few minutes until someone answered. At least the server room had light and I could see what I was doing. I sat down on the floor, leaning against one of the server racks, and pulled out my phone. That's when I heard it. My name. Someone calling my name. Coming from the hallway. A woman's voice. High-pitched and distant, like someone calling from far away. I stood up, looked out the server room door. The hallway was empty. The voice called my name again. Closer this time. I could hear footsteps accompanying it now. Someone walking down the hallway toward the server room. I stepped back inside and grabbed a screwdriver from my tool bag. It wasn't much, but it was something. The footsteps got closer. I could see a shadow on the hallway floor cast by the emergency lighting. Someone was coming. The shadow grew longer. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I waited. My heart was pounding. I gripped the screwdriver. The shadow didn't move. No one appeared in the doorway. I called out, asked who was there. No answer. Just that shadow, long and thin, stretching down the hallway. Then the voice spoke again, right outside the door. So close it sounded like someone was standing just out of sight. It said my name, then it said, "Help me, please help me." I asked who was there, what they needed. The voice said, "I'm lost. I can't find the way out. I've been looking for so long. Please help me find the way out." Something about the voice was wrong. It sounded human but off somehow, like someone trying to mimic human speech but not quite getting it right. The cadence was weird, the pitch inconsistent. I asked where they were. The voice said, "I'm right here. Can't you see me?" I could see the shadow. Nothing else. I asked them to step into the doorway where I could see them. The shadow moved, started to shift. Like whatever was casting it was moving closer to the door. I raised the screwdriver, took a step back. The shadow reached the doorway, stopped. I could see the outline now, a person, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. The head was the wrong shape. The arms hung down too far. I was staring at the doorway, waiting for whatever it was to appear. It never did. The shadow was there, clearly cast by something standing in the doorway, but I couldn't see what was casting it. The doorway was empty, just the shadow on the floor, outlining something that wasn't there. The voice spoke again. "Why won't you help me? I just want to leave. I've been here so long, please." I told it I couldn't help, that I didn't know what it was or what it wanted. The voice got angry. The pitch dropped. It said, "You're like the others. You can see me, but you won't help. You'll stay here too. You'll be lost with me." The lights in the server room flickered. The shadow in the doorway grew darker, more solid. The temperature dropped even further. I could see frost forming on the metal server racks. My breath came out in thick clouds. I backed up until I hit the far wall. The shadow started moving into the room, sliding across the floor like it was being cast by someone walking. But still, I couldn't see what was casting it. Just that impossible shadow, moving independently, searching. My phone rang. I nearly dropped it. I answered. It was building security. They'd gotten my voicemail, were calling back to check on me. I told them I was locked in the basement, that there was something down here with me, that I needed them to come now. The guard said he'd be there in 5 minutes. He worked in a building 2 blocks over, did rounds for several properties. He told me to stay on the line with him. I did, told him what I was seeing. The shadow, the voice. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "You're in the basement near the server room?" Said yes. He said, "There used to be offices down there. Before your company moved in, this building was a processing center for an insurance company. One of their employees went missing about 10 years ago. A woman named Sarah Vickers. They found her car in the parking lot, her purse in her office, but she was gone, never found her. Some people say she's still in the building, looking for the way out." I asked if he'd ever seen anything. He said no, that he'd heard stories from other guards, but never experienced anything himself. He said he was pulling into the parking lot now. He'd be inside in a minute. I stayed on the phone with him, heard him enter the building, reset the alarm I'd disabled, heard him walking across the first floor. The shadow in the server room stopped moving. The voice went quiet. The temperature started to rise. The guard came down the stairs, called my name. I called back, told him I was in the server room. He appeared in the doorway, real and solid. The shadow was gone. He checked the doors that had been locked. They all opened fine now with my key card. He walked me upstairs and out to the parking lot, asked if I was okay. I said I would be. He suggested I file a report about what happened. I said I would think about it. I went home. Didn't sleep that night, kept hearing that voice. "Help me. I can't find the way out." Kept seeing that shadow, moving on its own, searching. I did some research on Sarah Vickers. Found an old news article about her disappearance. She'd worked in the basement offices. Had been there late one Friday night, finishing up some work. Building security found her belongings the next morning, but she was gone. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just vanished. The police investigated, searched the building, the surrounding area. Nothing. The case went cold. Sarah Vickers was declared legally dead after 7 years. The insurance company moved out shortly after. The building sat empty for a while, before my company leased it. I talked to my boss about what happened, told him everything. He listened, then admitted that other employees had reported strange things in the basement, voices, shadows, feelings of being watched. That's why they'd moved all the offices to the upper floors. Only the server room remained in the basement. He said I could do most of my server work remotely, that I only needed to go down there if something critical came up. I agreed. I've been back to the basement twice since then. always during business hours, always with someone else. I haven't heard the voice again or seen the shadow, but sometimes when I'm monitoring the servers remotely late at night, I'll see something strange on the security camera feed from the basement. A flicker, a movement, a shadow passing through the hallway when no one should be there. And I wonder if Sarah Vickers is still down there, still searching for the way out, still calling for help from anyone who can hear her, still lost in that basement, trapped between wherever she went and the world she left behind. I wonder if she'll ever find the exit, or if she's doomed to wander those hallways forever, asking for help that no one knows how to give, searching for a door that doesn't exist, a way out that leads nowhere. I don't work late anymore. I make sure I'm out of the building before dark, because I don't want to hear that voice again, don't want to see that shadow, don't want to know what happens if I stay too long after everyone else is gone. Some buildings remember. Some places hold on to the people who've been lost in them. And sometimes, late at night, when you're alone at work, those people reach out, looking for someone who can hear them, someone who can help, someone who might finally show them the way home.